working in their other ways. They're getting other people to do their job.
Believe me, the Matrix will track us down.
We're now live on Facebook.
Ladies and gentlemen, the most exciting thing you've ever seen is us evade all of the Matrix down and dimwits. We are now live on Facebook any way we can. Tommy McKay here on 3D Politics Live on Facebook. As usual, David Van from SoonerPolitics.org and David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. Tonight, we've got big news. Rick Hubbard towards the end of the show to give us an update on how he is seeking his freedom and release from the oppression of the man. Also, the troubling facts of the cause. We got a case of a dead cop, and some of it say it's bad and botched carjacking by the police and a beatdown. It's a case of a dead cop. Conservative flight to the Tulsa suburbs, ladies and gentlemen. Also, mayor and cops backpedal from the mask ordinance. Plus, we've got confirmation from Craig Immel for a future appearance on 3D Politics. Craig Immel is one of the Tulsa mayoral candidates. Also, I've got a story and a lamentation about Dr. Dart. Dr. Jekyll threatens organizations, businesses, large and small, and individual employees. Oldham, what else have you got?
We've got a question. Will OSHA be the saving of American business and the end of the mask tyranny? And then also major retailers are backing away from their requirements for shoppers to wear masks. We'll have more on that.
Very good. Van, what do you go?
Yeah, also in court updates, we're going to find out about the lottery pick. You might get to go to church if you're one of 50 big winners this Saturday night.
Does God pick the winner, or do we have some lesser entity like a second responder pick it?
Well, God is in control of the lot, the lot in the lap, but he shouldn't have to be choosing who's going to get the earphone.
Well, yeah, you would think you could delegate that to some lesser entity. All right, well, listen, we were going to do all sorts of things beforehand, but because of the desperation of the man to shut down our amazing effectiveness here on 3D Politics, we continue to roll right through all the obstacles, knowing that the Matrix will track us down and shut us down in another way, shape, or form, but we will still, like a weed and a virus, continue to deliver the viral load to those who try to push us down. So, Oldham, we had to push your story from last week to this week because we had mayoral candidates that pressed into the local scene, which is always pertinent. But you've got your finger on the pulse of the constitutional issues and how this botched carjacking and beatdown went wrong here in Oklahoma. Tell us about it from last week.
Well, you remember that on the very day that it all came out, that it happened.
Remind us.
We discussed
I have
here.
forgotten. Remind us of what happened last week when it was.
Well, let's go back to June 29th. The early morning hours. A police rookie stopped a motorist for an expired paper tag. Okay, and because of that paper tag, he stopped the car, got all the information and so forth. A sergeant rolled up behind for support, and or was with him. I don't know exactly how that all came about, but the sergeant was with him, and one thing led to another. They decided they were going to tow the car, and they were going to tow the car. The man objected to them taking his vehicle and did not want to exit the car and surrender the car. The man's name was David Ware, and a scuffle ensued. The police determined to get him out of the car. A scuffle ensued, at which point Mr. Ware was pepper sprayed at least a couple times. He was tasered at least twice. and still managed to keep himself in the car. More details coming out now about more of that scuffle. He ended up retrieving a gun from the floorboard of his car somewhere in there in the melee. And as they exited the car, he took action and presumably in defense of himself, and ended up shooting both police officers, one of whom has passed away. Now, in the last week, new motions were filed. Well, it was last Monday. New motions were filed by the defense who want of Mr. Ware, who want the video to come out and be shown to the wider public in general. Right. This is important from their point of view because they think that a narrative, a governmental prosecutorial narrative has been laid, and that Mr. Ware has basically been tried in the public and convicted in the public already. And that's what their motion was all about, to try to get that out. In the process, they described some of the video, and some of the descriptions of the video are in direct contrast to the prosecutorial narrative that came out over the first couple days.
Right.
One of which was that Mr. Ware stood over Sergeant Johnson, who has since passed away, and shot him execution style 3 times.
Yeah.
Now, and that was that he stood over him and shot him. In other words, he was already shot and down and stood over and shot him another 3 times.
Yeah.
Turns out Sergeant Johnson was only shot a total of 3 times and never was just stood over and shot at. At least as the defense describes the video. Yeah. It also describes that Sergeant Johnson kicked Mr. Ware in the groin, kicked or stomped Mr. Ware in the groin at least 2 times.
Yeah.
While Mr. Ware was basically anchored against the door pillars, his feet out on the sidewalk, his hands against the door pillars, and in that case, the sergeant who was standing in the doorway was kicking him back into the car, basically kicking him in the groin in that position. That's what was described. So we have some completely contrasting things. The other thing, as I said on the first night, was that the stop, because licensure is unconstitutional, the stop was unconstitutional, and therefore everything that followed was unconstitutional. That would make the actions of the police officers akin to a carjacking.
Okay,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
For the sake of the viewers who are potentially mind numbed to the common knowledge, people are like, nah, why not just comply with the officers and fight this thing out in court? I mean, what did he conjure up a gun out of nowhere, and etc. So I mean, how is it that you can defend the rights of this guy from what you say is a carjacking, when it seems to most people a normal traffic stop?
Tom?
Yes.
If George Floyd would have just laid there and complied, would he still be alive?
Not asking you to use logic here, David. The logic, you know. But what I'm saying, how's a person solutions? What I keep, everybody tells me every week, you guys, you complain all day long. I say, that's what I'm good at. They say, you just seem like you lament. I'm like, I'm a professional lamenter. And they say solutions. I'm like, solutions? So how is it that when a guy like this, how do you fix this problem and keep a guy like that from shooting people?
Well, what you do is, first off, is I have gone back and looked at Mr. Ware's record. Only about half of the things he was convicted for were legitimate crimes, burglaries, thefts, things like that. The rest were drug possession charges. And as you know, I say we have a right. So the problem is the policing and the creation and enforcement of the laws by all members from the legislature, the governor, through the judiciary, and everyone in between all needs to be reformed. And that's a true solution. We do need to reform this stuff. The thing is that we, the people, need to recognize that we have a right to be free unless we abuse that right, and therefore deserve to have some liberty deprived from us.
The driver of the car, the driver of the vehicle, and I'm not as familiar with this story as you are, so forgive me for being wrong, but I mean, the driver of the car has not been endowed with the authority of the state to check people out. The people who pulled him over, that tried to take his, they tried to take his stuff, and he didn't like it. They were empowered. So we know that sometimes the state will operate in ways that are infringing.
But they were not. The power to impound doesn't come, even if you, let's say, in Oldham is making an argument about the constitutionality of the statutes.
Oldham is carrying up the more difficult part of this argument. Go ahead.
So, but let's, for the sake of this, say, okay, what if the statutes were constitutional? The statutes say that they cannot impound it until he's 90 days past due on registering and paying the taxes. He wasn't 90 days.
No.
Therefore, it was truly grand larceny, an active carjacking by force, including a beatdown by force, 2-1.
Now, remember, when the police acted according to law and took a man's $10,000 over in Wagner, when the Wagner sheriff's department took this man's $10,000 as asset forfeiture and then did not charge him because they got the $10,000. Remember that the attorney general prosecuted them for bribery. Okay, and they did everything by the law. Right. What David is saying here is, even though they did everything by the law, it's still a crime. And the attorney general recognized it in the case. That was the last act of Scott, what's his name? Went to Trump's administration. Anyway, it was his last act before he left the state. Was he charged the Wagner sheriff, and the Wagner sheriff ended up losing his job.
Right, but no, let's be clear. You just made a statement. You said if they did everything by the law. No, if they impound his vehicle before the 90 days, they are breaking the law.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's larceny,
worse.
Which is a felony.
Okay.
Tommy, go ahead.
Same. They were operating. I mean, grand larceny is a little bit superlative. They were operating on. I know. Look, I'm trying to be balanced.
Well, as soon as they go,
I'm just saying.
I'm a flamethrower, Tom.
They did.
Well, here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing.
They didn't know.
We're held to the letter of the law. Why aren't they? Why is it just a simple mistake when the police do it? But it's a crime and deserving of fines, punishments, jail time, perhaps, if we do it. But remember, this guy had received no due process. What I'm saying is this is a long-term, this is a decade-long creation of this problem where the judicial and justice system let this guy down time after time, who pulled him in there, who this time expected they could give him a beating because he's a former felon, and therefore he wouldn't have a gun. They could whomp on him and he wouldn't be able to fight back. Now, I don't know what was all going on.
Let's get to the bigger issue. The freaking cam. Where is the body cam? We paid in the 30s.
Where is the body cam?
We paid in the 30s for the body cam because it was going to end the high-speed chase, but we found out that the high-speed chase is so much fun, we don't want to end it.
Okay.
It kills all the ratings.
Because our great leader of, keeping us from total anarchy,
Dr. Dart?
Mr. Steve Kunzweiler, said, we're going to have to release it, just not yet. Why not yet? because it's condemning. My God, you know, I talked to a fella.
Right.
He was actually a client who was represented by the same defense attorney, Kevin Adams. And according to the narrative, Kevin was sitting there with the public defender's office staffer who was watching the video, and halfway through just said, I can't watch anymore. This is gruesome.
Because they're beating the hell out of this guy.
They're beating the tar out of this guy. And all he's trying to do is keep his property against larceny. They're carjacking.
Well, I mean, clearly the guy would have been cruising down the road, and had they treated him, you know, with the respect that they give 99% of anybody else, he would have just kept cruising down the road. They were the aggressors. He began to defend, according to the story we're hearing now.
Yeah, and Tom,
and the
Hold him. Hold him.
well, I was going to say I might fully have conducted myself differently than Mr. Ware, but I would have been extorted by the state for fines, fees, towing, etc. When I did so, even though I was in the right.
Right.
And
that happens every day.
The problem, and that is the problem, is we expect that we have no redress of grievances. So where else do you fight? And especially if the taking of the vehicle is an imminent harm to you because you can't get to work in the morning, you don't have the 25 or 30 bucks.
Hey, one more on this
Uber
one,
or whatever.
Yes,
Okay.
one more on this one, Van. What do you?
all right. Yes, and remember, at the founding of our state, it was already declared in our Constitution and in our first statutes, you don't take a man's horse no matter what he's done. He needs his horse, okay? Yep. Today it's his car. The problem I have with this is we've got a law that says, Tom, if you and I decide we're going to break, go steal some watermelons out of Mr. Jones' backyard garden.
Dang it, you blew our cover. Go ahead.
And Mr. Jones sees you prowling in there, and he decides to shoot and kill you. You know what? I get charged with your murder because I was involved in a crime when you got killed. Well, let me tell you, the rookie cop who was the one pushing for stealing his car may have to face the reality that he caused through his criminal act, a felony act. There's another cop dead.
Well, for sure, I can agree with this. It was the pretense of the authority of the state that caused the death. I mean, the guy was rolling down the road, whatever his, what was it? He pulled over a paper tag infringement. That was the way it started.
There was no moving infraction whatsoever.
I mean, if you kill people over a paper tag, that's a interesting way to go about enforcing law.
Yeah, he's late on his taxes.
Which, again, I pointed out last week or a week before, whatever it was. They don't fight crime, they manage crime. And that's what they were trying to do here. They weren't fighting crime. They thought, you know what, we'll manage this guy back through the system, see if we can work him into a couple of more tattoos. But the guy apparently was a pretty damn good shot. It's too bad he wasn't a cop. Because he's a damn good shot with that thing he found on the floor. It's a sad, sad day that we can't have cops fight crime. Yeah. They're out there trying to enforce paper tag rules. It's literally ridiculous.
I'm just going to tell people, watch Sooner Tea Party, their weekly newsletter. The founder, Al Gerhardt, is a client of this defense attorney. And he posted last night that the entire public defender's office had to recuse themselves on this one because of their relationship with this cop who's still married to another woman. In fact, he shows a picture of a pretty romantic and intimate photo is on Sooner Tea Party's newsletter right now.
The fact is we have the footage is available. Is that correct?
No.
I mean, the footage exists or not?
Oh, it exists.
It exists, but the judge in the case has forbidden it to be shown publicly.
Because Coons Waller told him to.
Because Coons.
Quite frankly, no. This was
where did this happen? Tulsa County.
This was Tulsa County DA the Tulsa County DA's office in an ex parte, meaning one-sided, without the other party, without the other party, without the defendant there. They went to the judge and asked the judge to keep it out of the public eye, and the judge said okay, and he has since denied the defense motion to release it. Now, you can go to constitutional grounds. I've also put it up on 3D Politics last week. Go read the article. We've got the link to the OSCN page. You can read all the information that we have and start judging for yourself. But there is so much more to this story than all the gushing praise that has come for all members of government and police from all of the propaganda media out there. We are breaking the other side of the story, and we need to have this discussion in Tulsa. Hey, let's solve the BLM problem, because it's not racial. It goes across all races, and this is just one more example.
That is correct. Yeah. Let's reset for those people who are just now joining us. Tommy McKay here with 3D Politics Live in the altered format because of Facebook's oppression. But once again, you can find me at Tommy McKay on Facebook and on Twitter. You can email me, 3dpoliticslive.com, McKay at. We've got David Oldham, constitutionalgrounds.com, and David Van, Soonerpolitics.org, as usual. I'm sure Blake Barber's out there somewhere watching, because, God, if it weren't for him, we'd have nothing to do. Conservatives are going to move to the Tulsa suburbs. Will we ever have a conservative city council or mayor? Van, what do you got?
Yeah, you're seeing it over there in Oklahoma City as well. It's the same thing. Over there, it's people moving down to Moore, moving out to Canadian County, or moving up to Edmond, as they've been for forever. And here in Tulsa, they're moving to Broken Arrow, Owasso, Sand Springs, Glenpool, Jenks, and the problem is you're left with a bunch of inner city liberals, more and more dominant. And I remember 7 years ago, the former city councilor, Chris Medlock, saying he doesn't think we'll ever have a conservative mayor again. And now we're electing a mayor and a new city council. And we got to ask ourselves, do we ever have a chance? That's really what I'm looking at. Is I don't know, how's it looking?
Well, given my conversation with some of the city council candidates, not real good. And quite frankly, some of them would be considered conservative. But from my perspective, again, constitutional perspective, we must get people involved that are constitutional, because it won't matter whether they're right or left or what they call themselves if they're going to act more tyrannically.
Just going to bring him in. Hey, we got Rick Hubbard coming in on the line here pretty quickly. Oldham, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but Rick is
no, please.
There he is. There is Rick Hubbard connecting to audio. Rick, are you there? Can you hear?
There we go.
I am.
Beautiful.
Excellent.
Nice job. I love your studio.
Yeah. I feel like that.
Man's got to do what a man's got to do.
He's got glowing halos around his head.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Rick, we're rushing you in. We told you to show up. I didn't enable a waiting room, so you just came right on in. Oldham, do you want to continue? No, that's my fault. My fault. I'm glad you're here, Rick. You're a big headlining topic tonight. But Oldham, finish off your thought there.
Well, the thought is that people run to where they can find more freedom. I'm doing that. I mean, good people.
Ask Rick Hubbard how that worked out for him in Broken Arrow.
Exactly. Well, the thing is that, and Broken Arrow is one of the better cities.
No doubt about it. No doubt.
And they're still horrible. We have so much work we have yet to do. But the thing is that it's the whole path of least resistance principle. And if you have the ability to move and there's an easier path out there, you take it until you're backed up against the wall, and then you have to put your foot down. But the Declaration of Independence talks about this, that people are disposed to suffer while suffering is tolerable. And that's what we're seeing is
Right.
okay, there's a place I can go, and as long as I can get there and afford to get there, I'm going to go there, and I'm not going to have to worry about it.
Yeah, because
And everybody else, it's like, no, go ahead.
Typically, people are not the aggressors. Government is the aggressor. Government carries all the force. Government always goes around crushing every people. Usually, people are like, "Hey, look, I'll just kind of like go over here, and you leave me alone." And the government's like, "No, no, no!" And they chase you down, stomp you out, take your car.
Well, let's remember that government does represent people, and the reason that government is acting tyrannically is because people want them to act tyrannically. We all know of, like in Rick's case, we'll get to that, and here I'll just start introducing it. Rick basically got swatted. You know, he had the police called on him when he was doing nothing, but exercising a liberty of his, and he was called and basically had a false police report filed against him. What happened to that? Therefore, the police act that way because they have so many people calling them.
I don't even know that we got a 911 tape, do we, Rick?
Yeah, I have the 911 call, and it's basically there's two of them. There's a lady calling in that says, "Hey, I don't know if this is legal," which is fine, and then the next one was from the fire station number 6 in Broken Arrow, that said a lady, just a mysterious lady, had driven up and said that I had pointed my rifle at her, and she just didn't feel like sticking around, so the firemen decided to call it in.
Okay, so that's hearsay.
Let's back up for a minute.
Yeah. Hold on. Just real quickly, we're kind of adjusting the order in which we did things because of my ineptness. Later in the show, we're going to talk about the mayor and the cops backpedaling from the mask ordinance. I've got a confirmation from Craig Emmel that he's going to be on our show. Mayoral candidate. Also, Dr. Dart threatens us all. Right now, we've got Rick Hubbard on the show speaking about how he was oppressed by the man. And let's kind of revisit how it was Rick Hubbard got smashed down and how it is he's sitting with us today. Who wants to start with that? To remember, not everybody is familiar with the Rick Hubbard case in our audience tonight.
Rick,
can you share with us what happened to you on that evening? Just
sure.
In real short.
Yeah, long story short, I was out for a walk. I was open carrying at a park. Apparently somebody didn't like it too much. Made a 911 call. To this day, we still don't know who that person was, haven't been able to track them down. And the police originally arrested me on obstruction charges, and then added pointing the next day, just to keep me in jail. They kept altering the charges to keep me there longer. I was in for about 3 days. Cost me, the bond was $15,000. And I was never charged with a crime, ever. They never could prove that I did anything wrong, and it lasted until the 22nd of this year.
Rick, now in the process of your confrontation with the police or them confronting you, David Nambroso, mutual friend of ours, says that they ordered you to the ground. Now, you've been dealing with, I think you had a surgery previous to this, and you're trying to comply and get to the ground, but evidently they were a little impatient, weren't they? What happened?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they showed up and they immediately drew down and were screaming to get on the ground, and I had my hands up and I was confused. I was like, what is going on? I asked them, what's going on? Y'all calm down. I'm a license holder. This is a pistol. Chill out. You know, they knew who I was. I know they knew who I was because I heard it over the 911 call. So they said, get on the ground. I said, okay, fine. Can I come to the sidewalk so I'm not laying in the mud? And they said, absolutely not. Another officer showed up with a cover ball gun and said, get down now or I'm going to light you up. And I said, okay, fine. You guys don't want to listen to reason. I dropped down to one knee and he shot me 15 times. And,
oh, man, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
15 times with pepper ball.
Yep. 15 times he shot at me. And
now, just so you guys know in context, in Oklahoma City, the detention officers at their jail killed a man with pepper balls. They lit him up. I don't know how many of that might have been closer to 100, but the pepper balls can be lethal. We haven't even showed that one was necessary here, and yet they decided 15. Okay, right?
Yeah, they and the funny thing is, and I mean this is just speculation on my part, but I believe it 100%. They were aiming on the side that I had a handgun. I had a handgun on my hip, and they shot me up and down the right side. And I feel like they were doing it to get me to drop my hands towards it in pain, so they had a reason to use live ammo.
Now that's an advanced chess move. There, I'll say, I got to ask a question. At the moment they decided to, quote unquote, according to their glossary terms of enforcement, light you up, what did you do or say that made them feel like lighting was the time to light?
I don't know.
I mean,
to
did
this
you
day,
say
I don't know.
You jumped, you went for your gun, you dove to the ground and rolled like little Joe?
No,
I mean,
I
the
probably,
thing is, what triggered them to all of a sudden decide it was a time?
I don't know. I don't have a clue. It could have been me saying, "What the hell are you doing?"
Have you seen the footage of your own abuse?
No, they still have my property.
Has anybody seen it that you know of?
They have no badge cams, Tom.
No. Nope. They claim there's nobody showed up. Nope, nobody that showed up had a dash cam or a body cam, and just conveniently every single surveillance camera in the area was either pointed the wrong way or malfunctioning.
That's pretty handy.
He's lucky to be alive.
Very, very.
Yeah.
So I got
you
were
were recording it.
Gentlemen, hold on, gentlemen. I got a couple of comments. Timothy Harper is watching.
Good man.
Timothy Harper says, hello, Rick. Tim here. And also Matt Gore says, did they know that Rick was recording prior to them shooting?
Yes, they were very adamant about me shutting it off. And I'm pretty sure that that's why I'm still here.
Yes.
Wow.
How about that?
Wow.
Drive through, please. We'll bring it out.
We would only have the cops' narrative if Rick wasn't alive.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And they were, the first thing they did after they put the handcuffs on was snatch my phone and run away with it.
Wow.
And so where is the phone now? Have you gotten it back?
No, it's still in the evidence room along with my firearms.
I understand they pressed you for password, etc., to invade your private space there. Is that correct?
Yeah, they ordered me to give up the passcode to my phone so they could do a blanket download of it. They wanted everything. On top of the video, they wanted my pictures, my phone calls, my emails, text messages, social media, anything they could get to go fishing for something.
Let me ask the Davids a question. You think that kind of information wanted from Rick Hubbard would be considered social contact tracing information? Speaking of social,
that's exactly what they're doing with contact tracing.
So on the side, let me just interject real quickly. I think that anybody who runs for Congress and wins should be subject to contact tracing, not for COVID, but for contact tracing.
Yeah.
That's a joke.
Now, here's a unique thing, and Rick, I know you and Tim Harper have been friends and probably are closer now as a result of this because he went through the same thing. In fact, the very night that you were accosted and hauled off, Rick was accosted by the cops over in Oklahoma City that very same night. And but his turned out a little bit differently. Although later on, Prater went after him, and Prater's still hanging on to him. I said, it was probably 6 months ago, I said, there will never be a charge filed in this case against Hubbard. They're basically gonna run out the clock and eventually give him his guns back. They were trying to shut you up, Rick.
Oh, absolutely. And the only reason it's done now is because I beat him on a technicality they didn't see coming. And as far as Tim's case goes, that's a joke. That DA should be brought up on charges. I was actually the guy that Tim called in handcuffs.
Yeah.
When they got
me.
Let me ask you this.
That's a problem when you're both in handcuffs and you're calling each other.
Right. No. Like, he was in handcuffs being picked up for it on the warrant, and he called me.
Yeah. So let me ask this. Are you, in fact, a current member of a tribe in good standing?
I am.
You are? Okay. So Kunzweiler had the pretense of dropping this under, you being a tribal.
No. No, I had to file a motion.
Okay, so you
filed a motion. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, my thing is, I think Kunzweiler knew that he had nothing on you, and he was just going to run out the clock. That's what I felt. And I felt like this ruling by the Supreme Court gave him a face-saving way to get out of it by saying, what can I do? Supreme Court took Rick Hubbard away from me.
Yeah, I can see it that way, but I don't necessarily know that he was smart enough to think ahead, because they didn't know that I was a Choctaw. They had every intention of dragging this out. When I went to court on the 22nd, it was to be held in contempt and thrown in jail for not giving the passcode to my phone, because the appeals court in Oklahoma refused to rule on my appeal, and they dismissed it, saying that because I hadn't been charged and because I hadn't actually been held in contempt, that it was inappropriate for them to rule. So it was just their way of saying, we're not going to do anything.
Right.
And so I went to court thinking I was going to jail because I wasn't giving that passcode up.
Yeah.
And way to go, by the way. You withstood a lot of pressure there not to give up the passcode. That was genuine manhood there. Nice job.
Well, and I think, I've got to throw this in for our watchers watching, because I know a lot of people are afraid of the government, whether it's the masks or whatever, they're fellow citizens out there. They're afraid of confrontation and so forth. Take a lesson from Rick here that when you just stand for your rights, it often works out in your favor. Sometimes you have to go through a whole lot of work to get it to work out in your favor, but it can work out in your favor. We just have to exert a little bit of, we've got to let go of the cowardice and exert some little bit of fearlessness.
No, I want to explain something. Okay, this is a little bit technicality, and Rick, help me out here on this. Both you and Tim Harper had the same kind of, I guess, bargaining going on by what terms they would drop your bail so that you could, in practical terms, afford to pay bail. And it included you voluntarily saying, okay, hang on to my guns as part of the bail.
That's
right?
That's what Tim did. I at no time agreed to that. That was just the order. The judge just said, this is what you're going to do if you want to get out.
Okay.
So, that was the order.
Okay.
For me.
God, the judge needs to be up on charges.
He's a
well, let it.
So
I'm sorry, but let it be a lesson to all that just because the judge orders it doesn't mean it's so.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean it's legal by any stretch.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, Rick. Go on with what you were saying, please.
You're all right. Basically, the judge is a special judge, so he's appointed. It's going to be pretty difficult to get him removed, just as is the judge that ordered me to give the passcode up. Now, I went to that court date on the 22nd thinking I was going to jail for contempt. We gave that motion to the DA right there, saying that I'm an Indian or I'm a member of the Choctaw tribe, and as a result of the McGirt case that came down on the 9th, they don't have jurisdiction. Everything, the warrant has to be quashed, and you guys are enjoined from prosecution. The DA read it, sat back, sighed real heavily, threw his hands up and said, I guess we're done here. And that was the end of it.
Well, let me say this.
Love it.
Here's a technicality in Rick. I know you got legal counsel on this. The interesting thing between you and McGirt said, I am a Creek Indian. This is Creek tribal land. Therefore, you have no jurisdiction. Now, in your case, you're saying, I am a Choctaw Indian. This is what? Creek land. How does a Choctaw have special rights in Creek land that the state can't interfere?
As far as I know, the way it works is if you are of any Indian blood and the alleged crime occurs in Indian country, then you're covered. If it's one of the major crimes under the Major Crimes Act, it goes to the federal government, and if it's anything else, it gets kicked to a tribe. So I don't know if they're going to try to kick this to the Choctaws or the Creeks, but I do know that they're not going to stop. They're going to try to get me prosecuted.
Okay, but so if you went up to Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota or Mille Lacs Lake Ojibwe Reservation, you get the same treatment. I wouldn't, but you would.
I would think so.
That's going to be a problem for a lot of us who think the 14th Amendment means equal justice under the law for all of us.
Yeah, and I can see where you're coming from, and I kind of agree with it, but the way the courts are looking at it is you're not in Oklahoma. You're in basically Lesotho is to South Africa. So, and I don't know how.
That's it.
I don't know how it's going to work in the future.
Because remember, those of you who studied Oklahoma history, Oklahoma became a state in 1907. In 1906, the 5 civilized tribes wanted to join the Union as the state of Sequoia, and they were rejected. So what we've got basically is Supreme Court saying, yes, this is the state of Sequoia, if you will. This is a problem, and we haven't worked it out. And the ramifications are much broader than the Major Crimes Act would say, because they weren't getting you on a major crimes.
No, they were just punishing me because they didn't like what I was doing.
They're playing little chess games because they're so far ahead in the power game against people like us that all they need to do is, look, they're not fighting crime, they're managing it, which means they got to draw out and pretend crime every time they can. So they see a guy going fishing and they're like, look, let's pretend a crime and draw it out. It's absolutely ridiculous. All they're doing is pretending a crime to validate their existence. That's all there is. You didn't do anything. You're walking along. They found a grandma to call the fire department on a guy who's not even on fire. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish this thing out, boys and girls. I got people chiding me on the line.
Okay.
I have a question. Rick, do you know how long they can keep this going before you can finally get all your stuff back? Because they can't keep it for indefinitely. It belongs to you. Your phone, even though that's now out of date.
No, it was 3 weeks old when they took it.
Okay, well, it's barely out of date.
To my email, Rick.
And then your guns and all of that. What are we looking at, and how can you go about getting all that stuff back?
Well, the statute originally said they had 3 years to charge me. I don't know what it is that they're going to try to kick it to Indian court, and I know they're going to hang on to my stuff if that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to hang on to my stuff and try to get the Indians to prosecute. That said, to get my stuff back, I have to make a request to Broken Arrow, which I will. And then I'll give them probably a couple weeks to return my stuff. And if they choose not to, then I'll file a motion with the court to force him to give it back.
Okay.
Right.
And as far as my handgun licenses go, I need something to provide the OSBI with saying that the charges have been declined. I have the minutes saying that they don't have jurisdiction, but apparently that's not good enough. And the DA is still telling them that they haven't declined charges, even though they've already acquiesced to the fact that they don't have jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I don't get the game they're playing.
If I could, I want to give just a little advice in front of the Facebook world and online. Rick, this has got to become a political issue. This has got to be something that the delegation to our state capital, from whether it's Dean Davis, TJ Marty, all of them, they need to be able to be the champions for the people against big government. And the same's true in the city council of Broken Arrow. You're in the middle of election season right now. And I'm saying, man, people, you got to get with Rick. We got to start demanding of these people in office that they're going to keep the deep state from imposing this kind of tyranny on us.
And we got people knocking down statues and burning down Portland, and they're attacking a guy like Rick Hubbard for going fishing. We got a damn problem around here, people. And if you can't see it, you're going to have to wake up. It is absolutely 100% ridiculous. Rick, I appreciate your ability to withstand the oppression from the man, the ability to not give up your password. It takes a lot of guts and stamina. There's a lot of peer pressure going on, and you're withstanding it. I, for one, appreciate it. We're going to do everything we can to help you out.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I want to ask you, Rick, before you leave us, what do you need? What do you need from the people? What can we do to help you?
At this point, I would say call the DA and say end it. Stop playing games. Give him his stuff back and let him live his life.
But
The
now,
DA,
Broken Arrow,
Kunzweiler?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Broken Arrow Police Department as well. You need their cooperation on this, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I need them to give me my stuff back, acknowledge that they lost this one, and move on.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And Tom, I'm telling you, Rick Hubbard, you can tell here, he's not a flamethrower. He's not a hothead, like some of us. And Tim
No reason
Harper.
to call me out. I'm just sitting here.
And Tim Harper, the same thing. And I thank God there's people like this.
Yeah.
There's a right place for a guy of the calm, peaceful countenance and deportment of guys like him.
Trust me, you find a libertarian walking down to go fishing, he'll fold like a cheap lawn chair and a breeze. Are you kidding me? You can't find a libertarian that'll stand up for this crap.
I'm just telling you, this guy and Rick Hubbard are doing the Lord's work in Oklahoma.
Oh my God.
Right.
Rick, we appreciate you hanging in there and being on the
thanks.
show tonight. We'll bring you back again as soon as we know something more. Thank
Sounds
you very
good.
much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
All right. Nice job, Rick.
Yep.
Man, am I glad we are here for him. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
All right. Nice job, Rick.
Yep.
Man, am I glad we are here for him. That's all I can say.
Well,
If it was him, I'd be
it's
loving me
interesting.
right now.
Well, it's interesting that although some of the story got out, not all of it got out, and
Right.
it's amazing what parts didn't, because I learned a lot. I did not know about 15 pepper balls just repeatedly and at his gun side. So if he flinched, he's going to flinch toward the gun.
Talk about
Who
man.
knows if
I
that
thought
was-
I was
who knows
paranoid.
if-
This guy's way ahead of me. I mean, he's got the
Well, I mean, who knows what their individual
that's-
motive was, and if that's, but I mean, it could be that could be all part of training,
who knows?
Um,
That is advanced
God.
understanding right there, making me flinch toward my gun so that they can say later. I mean, this is nasty world we live in. Nasty.
Well, if he is correct in that, those are murderous thoughts. That is
Well, it's called premeditated.
That is
That's
first degree. That's premeditated.
Premeditation.
Oh, absolutely.
That's premeditation.
Oh, absolutely. And under color of law, which only makes it worse. Worse, not acceptable. Worse.
All right. Hey,
Oh, gosh.
more coming up, ladies and gentlemen. We are just crushing down the minutes on.
You know what? All we need right here is a commercial.
Well, here it is. Listen, 3D Politics every week on Monday night. No matter what they try to do to shut us down, we'll be back here like a nasty weed growing in your lawn.
With the 3 big things you need to know.
The 3, I call them the 3 magnitudinal items that you need.
Do we really want to be associated with that radio station at the moment? Are you kidding me? We're going to have to talk about that. The 3 big things you need to know.
I call the top 3 items of magnitudinal importance. But that's
Yeah.
just, you know,
But Oldham, do you really want to be a moronic knuckle dragger?
oh my God.
Oh, I already am a moronic knuckle dragger, don't you know?
Oh my God.
That's just so you guys know.
Okay,
That's
so-
what. Huh?
Okay, so we have completely interrupted Tom in his.
Here we
reset
go.
everything.
Let's
Okay.
just
But
reset.
let's- Okay, go ahead. Then we'll let everybody in on the joke because
Yeah,
they have
I'm
to know
about
what
to
we're
set
talking
it up. This morning, Dan Potter was reported to have said that those who will not comply with the mask edict are moronic knuckle draggers. Now, evidently, this was part of his interview with Mayor G.T. Bynum, who said nothing to condemn that kind of statement. Even though Bynum has totally backed off of it and has said on the radio, he said, you know what, there are people with health conditions that don't need our judgment, don't need our grilling and our second guessing.
You know, what I've learned from watching sports is that knuckle dragging morons can't run as fast as monkeys.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Remember that
Yeah.
one?
Well,
Look at that monkey.
But here's
go.
here's the thing, and this is the point that I want to make. Yes, Dan Potter of KRMG Radio,
Yeah.
Cox Media Group.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an
That.
M? I thought it was an
Yes.
N as in Nancy. I thought it was
And they are the purveyor of the 3 big things you need to know. That's
Correct.
That's
That's
the
why we were
inside joke,
making light
folks.
of it.
That's right.
That's the joke we were
Can't
getting at
believe
earlier.
we have to
Okay, so
explain this. Tom
but
McKay
here's-
with
but
3D
here's-
Politics every Monday night. You're insane if you're not watching. David Owen from constitutionalgrounds.com. David Vale from pseudopolitics.org. Oh my God, we just got through interviewing Rick Hubbard, man oppressed by the government and still yet standing, speaking what they call truth to
That's right.
power, ladies and gentlemen. The mayor and the cops are now backpedaling from the mask.
Absolutely.
They say that they're threatening a trespassing ordinance, which of course isn't a problem with the government. It's a problem with the private business. So, you know, if you're doing business with a bunch of jerks that require you to wear a face mask, go somewhere else because otherwise you're going to be up against a trespassing law.
Right.
Man, what do you
And one
know?
other thing, you're wondering why my friend Mr. Trustman is here. It's baseball opening week, but according to Rush Limbaugh, we may have already seen our last game of the season because an entire team is on lockdown for COVID. All right.
I mean, come on.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Okay.
So
So
I wanted to celebrate baseball for the few days that it actually existed this year. Oh, and by the way,
and they're just as bad as the soccer people where they put in crowd
Thank you.
noise in an empty stadium. I don't know if you guys
Thank you.
watched.
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't talk,
you
we
know
didn't talk
I-
about it last week. We didn't talk about it last week with Fauci and his throwing out the first ball like a 2-year-old who can't even throw the ball. It was horrible. But he was one of only a very few select important people that got to sit in the stands and watch the game. The entire stadium was completely
No,
National
guys.
Stadium was completely
Right,
empty
right.
except
Okay.
for Fauci, his two-person group that were with him, the two
Right.
other people that were with him,
Yeah. But
and I don't know who else, but
okay.
I
But what
couldn't
I want
pick
to
out
say,
too many.
Friday, my daughter called, says, Dad, let's go to a ball game. And we haven't had a father-daughter date in a while. So we did. And I would say there's over 1,000 there. It was a great night. And I'll support the minor leagues. Those are guys who, they're not the kind of people who kneel during the national anthem. You know, the major league people, I'm done with them. Okay. I'm a Vikings fan, or I was, but I have no reason to watch an NFL game this year.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
going to have to earn me back.
Yeah.
You know, but listen, these guys who are struggling for a chance, I'll support the Scab League, okay? But not this bunch of millionaires who think that the best thing for their future is to have some social cause that makes them cutting edge bad boy.
Hey, if you were an expert in politics, I'd be watching you on firing line. You're an expert in sports. Play the game. I don't want to hear your damn opinion on politics.
That's
I
right.
tune into sports for sports.
Yeah.
If you're looking for basketball and you're here, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's my little deal on baseball. That's a distraction tonight. Let's get on with the
you were talking about
that was my favorite part.
You were talking about the city basically backing off on some of the their requirements. Yeah. Well, quite frankly, it's run the gamut, and it's not just the cities. The cities are finding that people aren't complying. They're finding that the retailers aren't all going along with it. We just had just over the last couple days, major retailers who have openly come out and said that they were going to require everybody to wear masks as shoppers. Yeah. Places like Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, Walgreens, CVS. Notice that they're competitors. All have backed off on their mask requirements, and famously so. And it's necessary because let's face it, these cities have imposed these requirements on these retailers. And the retailers feel it, and if they're national, they feel it over a broader scope.
Oldham, let's give some credit where credit's due here. I don't know if it was the FOP or if it was Chief Franklin, but a letter came out a couple of days after the city council passed to where they said, basically, we're ignoring it. That's it. And then the mayor, now they said the only thing close to it would be if a business has it as their rule that you got to wear a mask and you don't, the business has a right to say, fine, then leave. Just as they have a right, just as they have a right to say nobody comes in here unless they're wearing OSU orange. We don't take crimson and cream at this store. Okay, they have a right to do that. And if you don't, they'll say
they have a right to say if you have a skin color we don't like, you can't.
Well, that's a protected class with the federal law. Yeah, see, we have rights and then we have special rights.
No, okay.
Okay, so anyway, what they said is if that business doesn't want you there,
and
they have a right to tell you leave the premises. And if you don't, then we will cite you for trespassing.
So it's not a mask. It's not a mask law. It's a trespassing ordinance.
And it's been the law since statehood.
Trespassing isn't new.
Well, but here's the thing: is a lot of these places are being forced by these licensing agencies, and here we go back to licensing again.
Yes,
we go. These licensing agencies, and this leads right into your DART story, where they threaten the businesses that if they don't comply and force this. Then they're going to lose their license. And that's how the shutdowns happened this last time around. It was all through licensing.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why you saw today. I went into 2 different Home Depots, and they got signs everywhere at their front entrance. I mean, it's sign city. But everybody's just walking past and nobody's paying attention to enforcing it. So the signs are there to show the government, no, we got these rules.
Okay, this is exactly like the white and colored signs above the bathrooms and the drinking waters back during the day, okay, when I was a child.
I think.
And so nobody gave a damn what color you were. There was a drinking fountain, but to comply with federal law, they had to have the sign. That's all it is. It's a pincher move, and the government force pushes the capitalist businesses against their own consumers by pressing them into these federal laws and state laws of ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's just like the sales tax. Tom, when you buy something, you owe the sales tax, not to the merchants, but they make the merchants enforce it on you.
Actually, the way they word it is that the merchant owes the sales tax, but may collect it from the consumer. Now, here in Oklahoma, they actually do it differently. They say that the merchant owes the sales tax and shall collect it from the consumer, which is weird. But federal doesn't, or other states don't do it that way. It's all
I'm talking about in Oklahoma, because Oklahoma says if you buy something from another state, technically that's interstate commerce, and that is sales tax free. But Oklahoma says as a resident, you have to, when you file your annual state income tax, you have to pay that tax that is your sales tax to our state, even though you bought it from another state. Okay. So, but when you buy it in state, we make the merchant collect it from you. And the merchants, it's never the merchant's money. And because they get prosecuted for not paying it, saying that wasn't your money. That was the people paying their taxes, and you're stealing somebody else's. However, if somebody breaks in your store at night and steals all the money, you don't get to say, hey, I'm sorry, I got no sales tax because it all stole. They said, no, you're responsible for it. So wait a minute, you said it wasn't my money. Somebody broke in here and stole the state's money, but they don't count it that way. You get screwed it's either
like
way.
It's like a school teacher. They have 100% liability and zero authority to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Say, do you want to move into the Dr. Dart story yet? I mean, is that what we're going to do?
It kind of ties in here, you know.
I would say that this would be a good segue.
Yeah, because
because I want to try to share. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about how it is that Dr. Dart threatens organizations, small businesses, individuals, and employees, singular employees. That is, one person at a time. Dr. Dart and his secret police can take you out of a big business. And remember, he's also coming after organizations. Any organization. What kind of organization? I used to run a comedy troupe. That's an organization. And Dr. Dart with his secret police, they call them contact tracers. And all they got to do is say, you are a witch and your organization can't operate anymore. And the way it works is, and I got listen to how much, if this properly shares, you'll hear how much authoritarian tyranny comes through in 1 minute of an unelected bureaucrat. But he's annexed the power to interfere with the privately contracted personnel of larger companies enforced by the minions of the unelected. Dart associates inconspicuously dubbed the contract tracers, okay? Despite his continued fear-mongering from the pulpit of G.T. Bynum, Dr. Dart's regime will not take responsibility to warn the public of his data that shows impending spate of infections, which you're going to listen to if it works properly. Dr. Dart says, if your organization, let's say you're at the bowling alley and you work at the bowling alley and you find out that a coworker at the bowling alley has COVID, then the contact tracers from Dr. Dart will come in and work with you on how to tell everybody in your organization and how to work with limiting people in your organization. But Dr. Dart and his regime will not be responsible for telling the public that there might be a spike in death at the bowling alley. So if there was really death at the bowling alley, do you think he'd leave it up to the bowling alley to tell you?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
we're going to see if I can share this screen here.
And
All
while
right.
you're doing that, Tom, remember, Dr. Dart is just as much a physician as Dr. Oral Roberts is a physician, as Kenneth Hagin is a physician, because they're called doctor, don't you know?
Right.
Yeah. You know, again, the doctorate degree conveys nothing specific to medical. This guy has a doctorate in administration, healthcare administration. You know, so I'm telling you, this guy is an empty suit. He is the epitome of deep state. And the sad thing is he's been empowered by who? G.T. Bynum, the guy who doesn't know how the buck ever should stop at his desk. And so he's always looking for somebody else to make the hard decisions and take the heat for it.
Well, he might make the decisions, but he wants somebody else to take the heat for it. That's for sure.
Yeah. I feel like this is Brady Bunch here, and Tom's moving over.
Well,
squares.
I'm trying to share this screen, and I'm having a trouble figuring out how to do it. Let me read you the quote from Dr. Dart, July 23, 2020. He says, quote, "If a business or organization has a positive case, a representative from the Tulsa Health Department will call individuals at the facilities that have been exposed to a confirmed case to assess the risk and make a recommendation, including isolation and or quarantine." Continuing the quote, Dr. Dart says, "That is done in collaboration with a positive case through contact tracing. Risk of exposure depends on the situation and the type of employer. For example, a small business where employees work in close contact with one another may result in the need to close the business while the employees all quarantine and monitor for symptoms. In a larger company where the person who was positive was unlikely to have been in close, prolonged contact with every single employee, our quarantine recommendation does not apply to the entire company. Case investigation information is confidential." Here we go, kids, with the real meat of Dr. Dart's deceit. He says he's found death, and he says case information is confidential. That is, the case of death that Dr. Dart finds will remain confidential. It will not be released publicly by the Tulsa Health Department. For example, throughout the response, our contact tracers may identify a workplace and will work with that workplace to make recommendations to notify risk of exposure, but the workplace may elect that information public. But the THD will not replace, will not make that information public. What Dr. Dart is saying is he will hold the business responsible for having the death at their business, but he won't tell anybody about it. Dr. Dart is totally deceitful.
And he will not have to prove any evidence because he'll say that evidence is confidential.
Correct.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, again, this is the whole contact tracing. If it was done in lawfulness, I wouldn't have too much trouble participating, but they have proved themselves to just shrug at the law and disregard it in complete and utter lawlessness. As we have talked from the first minute of this show, all we have talked about is lawlessness from government toward us. I mean, that, and so we want to start talking about solutions. It's like we've got to start talking about law and order and applying that to our government officials. You know, we've talked almost ad nauseum about getting, GT of late anyway, GT just to take responsibility, or at least apply responsibility toward him for the decisions that he's making, the unconstitutional decisions that he's making. And it's just mind-boggling how they think that this is at all lawful, or they have these authorities when you have every right to remain silent and not participate in these things. Now, has Tulsa come out with anything that says that there's going to be, a fine if you don't participate, if you don't comply?
No, it's all up. Again, this is like when I argued about the curfew. They said we're going to use graffiti laws. They said we have a problem with graffiti, so we're going to use a curfew law to enforce the graffiti laws. Well, laws can't enforce, it takes a human. So this is what they're doing with the mask thing. The mask thing can't be enforced, so what they're using is trespassing laws to enforce another law, because there is no law. I was born without a mask. I was born this way. I walk around without a mask. You can't force me to be a way I wasn't born by law. It's ridiculous.
And that's the thing. When they borrow from other laws, which were intended to deal with other things, why? Because they don't have the political support to actually enforce their tyranny on the current issue. This happened to me about 4 years ago. All of a sudden, somebody knocks on my door. I'm a city inspector. You can't park a business vehicle in a residential neighborhood. It's my contractor deal. I've got ladders on it, and it's got the name because it's a commercial vehicle. In order for me to get my commercial license plates, I have to have a name on there. And I pressed him and I pressed him. I went down to City Hall. I fought it. The guy said, listen, here's why we have to do this. Because there's a fella over here in another neighborhood that drives a tow truck. And every third weekend, it's his night to be on call. He says, and he fires up that big diesel tow truck in his neighborhood at 2 a.m, wakes everybody up. That's why we can't have commercial vehicles in residences. And I said, that's what's called a disturbing the peace, and he should be prosecuted on that. They said, yeah, but nobody can catch him at 2 a.m. because they're asleep, so this is how we're doing it. And so I said, well, there's my neighbor with the taxi cab. And I said, are you going after him? Here's my other neighbor who's a real estate agent, and she's got her own realty thing. I said, are you going after everybody or just guys with ladders on their trucks? And really, that's what he was doing. He was going after trucks, and because my van constituted a truck, he went after me. So this is where they will take an existing law and try to bastardize it and exploit it to go after something that they can't get the legislature, or in our case, city council, to pass.
Well, and just for our listening audience, take this information and it's like, what can we do with this to create solutions? Because we're not all, we 3 or 4 are not the all-knowing solution masters. That's where we require the 3.5 million Oklahomans and the 350 million Americans to join us in recognizing the problem and come up with good, lawful solutions. Because obviously our elected leadership has no clue how to do it without violating David's rights, to just park his vehicle in his own driveway. And I had the same problem in Oakland or in California. The same identical problem. And it's stupid because it's like, it's my driveway. This is actually my place of business. I work out of here. So why can't I park a car? Because you said not to? I'm sorry, I'm an American. Yeah. And I get to do what I want as long as I'm not harming anybody else. And you can't prove that I am. Yeah. So shut up and go away. Mm-hmm. And I hope that everybody else would start doing that, because as soon as we all do that, they lose their power.
Yeah. So you know what happened? When he saw I was putting the screws to him and I had a little bit of political connection, he said to me, he says, look, I have a duty to come back and inspect you sometime in the next 2 weeks. He says, I don't know what's parked in your garage. I said, oh, okay. So for the next 2 weeks, I parked it in the garage. And he said, problem went away, and he went on his way. And he never came back because I pushed back a little bit.
Well, and here's the thing. some people don't have garages. At least you
Yeah.
were able to put it in there, but you
Yeah.
probably had to pull the ladders off in order to
Yes,
fit
I
it.
did.
Which meant
Yes,
a lot
I did.
which meant a lot of work for you
Yes.
every single day to
Yeah.
to comply.
Yeah.
And that's the junk that we've
Yeah.
got to end. They don't have the right just because they got
Right.
a ticket book. in
And
their hand.
here again, it's because of some deep state guy, some bureaucrat who wanted to go beyond what the law said and try to exploit it.
Sort of. There was a snitch in your neighborhood as well.
Oh yeah, yeah, but he's
Didn't
dead now.
like your van, and therefore, no,
Yeah,
this is how they all come about. No, I had a
No.
friend who was
He-
code compliance in LA City,
Can I
and
share?
Tom.
that's how they all come about is
Tom.
snitching.
Yeah.
Tom, here's who it
Yes.
was. It was my next door neighbor, and he didn't like that I was parking my car where it was a little bit tougher for him to get in his driveway. He wanted me to park about 10 feet away from his driveway, right? But I was following the law. So not only did he do that to me, but he called the state locksmith agency to get me on operating a locksmith business without a license. Why? Because I painted somebody's bathroom, and in order to paint the trim, I had to take the doorknob off, with the little push button lock. When I put the doorknob back on and had a lock, that constituted doing locksmith work without a license. I kid you not. The state locksmith agency called me and said, take that off your website, because it said doors and locks.
Does this guy have a detective license? Because he needs one if he doesn't.
He's dead now.
Good
He's
job.
dead
Good job, Ben. I'll never turn you
No,
in.
I'm telling you, when the cops finally found his dead body, which had been rotting in his house for 3 weeks, they come to me and said, what do you know about this guy? And I'm like,
That's nice.
some cops came by a couple weeks ago and was telling my
Yeah.
neighbor they were looking for him. So I went over and I put a penny on his back tire of his truck. And nice truck, about a $50,000 really fancy truck. And so I showed the deputy, I said, here, see, I said, I figure you guys were looking for him, maybe like it was a warrant or something, because he's had stuff repossessed before, And I said, here's the penny. I put it there. I said, he hasn't moved that truck. And he says, well, we're not suspecting he's gone. We just found his dead body in the house. Ends up, he was an alcoholic and a diabetic, and he was in a coma. Diabetic coma.
Gee.
Yeah, and lived
He had it
alone.
all covered.
And lived alone, yeah.
Wow.
And again, but people, Tom, I want to say this. You don't have to pray for karma. It just happens as a natural law.
Well, yeah, karma's a thing.
That is its
you have to-
definition, right? It's
right.
beyond all of us.
Well, you have to try.
Yeah, it just
Okay.
does.
But we do have to reset here a little bit and make sure
Oh.
we cover the OSHA. We still have some business.
I
yet to
was
do.
Yeah,
never,
but
for some
but
reason,
I
was
wanna
never
do it-
able to share that.
I
can't
want to do a
figure out-
tie-in. I want to do a tie-in for you.
Shit.
Dan Potter called us a bunch of moronic knuckle draggers. Okay? Why?
Okay, I'm a knuckle dragger.
Okay,
Moron.
because listen,
Well, we know you are.
Thank you.
he's assuming that that's the kind of attitude in intelligence. He's never had a health condition then that precluded him from being able to wear every mask. And you know what?
Well, here's the problem with Dan Potter. Dan Potter is a propagandist for government lawlessness.
But I'm making my point, David, is that
Okay, sorry.
he's not had to deal with some of the constraints that other people have. And I said, until he has to face it himself, he's going to be one of these simple-minded, blissful people with an arrogant, judgmental attitude. But you know what? Karma happens, and we don't have to pray for it. It just happens. He'll get his.
Well, and that's a great segue into what I'm talking about, because I was talking on Saturday. I'm out playing soccer with a bunch of people, and some people mentioned that they had severe anxiety about the masks.
Yeah.
And I said, it's not so much that it's unreasonable anxiety, because did you know that your mask is actually a hazardous airspace, a confined airspace that is a hazard to you? and they looked at me a little bit quizzically because they'd never heard anything like that before. And what I wanted to do was share real quick, trying to find it to share it, but we did a video. I won't name the gal who did the video because she needs to remain
Paula
nameless.
Abdul. Sorry, I just said it. Paula Abdul.
The blonde Paula Abdul.
Whatever. You know, Paula Abdul.
The
Kids don't know.
anyway, I'm trying to find my. Let me find my page. So.
Why can't I share my screen?
I don't.
Well,
Am I stupid?
I don't know. I'm
Is it
able
possible?
to share mine. So
I
let me
can't
just
scare-
find
I
the
can't
right
find-
one.
Yeah, where'd you find it? How do you share it? I'm pissed. I shared last time.
Share down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Let's see. Get down here.
See? Oh, look, I found it. I can share mine now.
Aren't you special?
Okay. Well,
What
for some
happened?
reason,
Wow.
I'm struggling to find the pay that particular
This is fun, isn't it?
that particular. Well, dang. I want to.
I've got some video of some pretty dancing
Let me
girls
find
in a
it this
bikini.
other way. let me find it this other
Hey,
way.
while he's doing that, I want to say for those of you want to know more about the Dan Potter KRMG, we did a story on Sooner Politics.
Now you're
and,
talking.
yeah,
Now you're
so I just
talking.
wanted to put that up there so you can see it. You look it up. It's on 3D Politics Facebook page. So
Is that
take a
Dan
look at
Potter?
that. That's Dan Potter.
Oh, I thought he was much better looking than that.
Yeah, I know. But he's
He always
much more
talks about-
intelligent.
Statues don't fall far from their IQ.
Yeah.
What can you do?
That was actually me trying to see if screen sharing works for me.
Yeah, I can screen share now.
Good.
Now I'm back to it. But it'll take us all the way back to what I was
Hold
like.
on, you must not be living right.
Yeah, karma.
There's something.
There
Okay,
we
so
go.
let's take a look. Hang on, let's take a look and see if. Okay, can you see that video?
Man, can we?
You
I
can.
see.
Okay.
Double click it.
So what we need to do is, let me stop it right here real quick. So what we have is
Hold on, it's not
right.
running.
Wait a minute, you're just showing us your Explorer, Windows Explorer.
Yeah, you're gonna have to double
Okay,
click.
I asked you if you could see it, and you.
Well, yeah,
indicated
I
you
see
could.
the
We can
file
see it.
name.
Yeah, double
No, I
click.
said, can you see the video? Hang on.
Yeah.
Hang
double
on.
click it.
Okay, hang on.
There.
Okay,
Oh,
hang on.
that's not me. I thought we were
the-
winning.
The thing will not play. Will not play my player. It will not allow
It's
me to
not my
play the
fault.
player. Oh, here, hang on. Let's see what this.
I got
Okay,
one.
here we go. I got it. And let's. Okay, now, dang.
It's late in the show.
Tom got popcorn, huh?
I
We
think
got Rick. We got Rick.
they made me. They made me start to do this. Okay, so here we go.
Good, because when I come on, I'm gonna look good when you're done.
Oh, yeah, you are.
Yeah, because when I go, mine's gonna be like butter.
All right, where is this thing?
This whole 3D politics
Gosh,
show
this
is
is
based on a
weird.
true story. I'm Tom McKay, your host, David Van, SoonerPolitics.org, and David Oldham, ConstitutionalGrounds.com.
Why is this not?
Tom
why
comes
is
to
this
us
not
live
showing?
from the Bob Will studio.
Okay, so
I'm
we're
gonna go
gonna do
over here.
this.
Here we go. Here we go. This is all
Okay, there
true.
we go. So you should be able
Yeah.
to see the video up right there.
Okay.
So what I want you to see, what I want you to note, is look in the lower right hand corner of the meter. You'll see it says 20.5. That is
Okay.
the percentage of oxygen in the air. Okay, this is what the gal is holding here is an oxygen meter. It's actually a 4-gas meter, and it does things like carbon monoxide or dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and low explosive level for going into an enclosed space.
So,
And
this device calculates how much air is sucked out of the room when her beauty walks in. Is that what they do?
No, I mean, well, all the
No, what you're gonna hear in a second when I start the video, is you're gonna hear a little vacuum sucking sound, and that is the device, the meter pulling in oxygen from the ambient air. And what you see in the lower right hand corner is the percentage of oxygen in the ambient air. Now I bring this up and I show this video because 20.5% is good.
Well, yeah,
Anything
because aren't we 80% nitrogen in our atmosphere?
Nitrogen, and mostly nitrogen, and then a few other things in the air.
Yeah, but we're about 20% oxygen in our air, right?
Correct.
Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a scientist.
21%. So what we have is we have good oxygen here.
Yes.
Now OSHA has put a limit on going into an enclosed space at 19.5%. Anything below 19.5% is considered hazardous environment, and you're not allowed to go into it. Now watch this. This video takes all of 30 seconds. Watch this. So 20.5% right here in the bottom right-hand corner.
Fact check.
Put on her mask.
The air is gone.
And turn on the meter, put it up. The mask isn't even on her mouth, on her face, really good. And there we go. And if you look at it right there, 18.5%, and it climbs from there.
Freaking death.
So here is the point, and that is that we have anybody, and now I've seen a bunch of these videos. Anybody who is wearing a mask, and even if it's just a single covering of your mask, is an OSHA considered hazardous space violation. Every single one. So every single worker out there who has to wear a mask is by definition in a hazardous enclosed space, and there is reason for that anxiety to have that mask over your face. It's not. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you've actually set me back up. So the idea here is that the mayor of Tulsa, G.T. Bynum, has ceded his authority to a county guy named Dr. Dart, unelected, to enforce rules that are in violation of OSHA. Is that correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so now let me try to share this screen if I can. We're going to see if this works. This is 1 minute from Dr. Dart, if it works. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so here is the 1 minute that I quoted where he threatens small businesses, large businesses, and singular employees.
This is important because we've heard misconceptions that people are being kind more than once if they test positive more than once. That is false.
Are you hearing it?
If a business or organization has a positive case, a representative from the Tulsa Health Department will call individuals and facilities that have been exposed to a confirmed case to assess the risk and make a recommendation, including isolation and quarantine.
So the government comes along to recommend out of nowhere. Anybody could come along and say that business. And it's like witch hunting. And so Dr. Dart, the pricker, gets to come along and say, oh, you know what? We found out one person in your organization has tested positive. And so now here we come, and here he goes.
That is done in collaboration with the positive case through contact tracing.
Secret
Risk
police.
of exposure is dependent upon the situation and the type of employer. For example, a small business where employees work in close contact with one another may result in the need to close the business while the employees are quarantined and monitored.
He just threatens right here to close down all small businesses. He says if you're a small business and they get to decide, see, it's forced group association, they'll decide whether your business is small enough. And if they decide, if you're small, that means every employee is subject, will close your whole business down. Now, here he talks about large employers where he's going to single out certain employees that he doesn't like.
For symptoms. In a larger company where the person who is positive was unlikely to have been in close, prolonged contact with every single employee, our quarantine recommendation does not apply.
So he applies a harsher, stricter universal discovery against smaller businesses. But if you're in a large business, he'll single out the one employee he doesn't like that hung out not with everybody, but the other people that employee hangs out with.
But Tom, the big employees have huge law firms that can fight it.
Yeah, but the big the bigger employers are working with the government to get rid of those people who want to exercise their freedom, furthering with the minute of Dr. Dart tyranny.
Yes, the entire company. Case investigation information is confidential. It will not be released publicly by Tulsa Health Department. For example, throughout the...
Okay, he just said, if we find out your company has death running around at your business, Dr. Dart won't tell anybody. He has the data that proves you've got death in your business, but Dr. Dart isn't going to warn anybody.
Right. And he doesn't have to prove anything. You have to take his word for it.
And it's all done through secret police, like Fahrenheit 451. You turn your friend in over there at the bowling alley, and all of a sudden the person who runs the bowling alley has no idea why they're being shut down. It's the same way I got run off of Facebook.
So what's the solution for this? Well, the solution is for every county worker to call OSHA. And if you go to Constitutional Grounds or go to 3D Politics, it's up there. Go to my article that I posted today and call OSHA. They will transfer you here in Oklahoma. They'll transfer you to Oklahoma City. Start leaving messages. They have not returned my phone call. I left them a phone call. 4 or 5 days ago.
Yeah. Now
we need to inundate them so that they are forced to then get out and also call media and say, hey, OSHA's not dealing with this. There's all of this going on. I have been told that the video that we just watched of the testing under the mask, that those videos have supposedly been all banned by Facebook as false, as false news.
So
I don't know.
Here's my concern on this. Bynum set this up over a month ago. He made sure we all knew that he told Administrator Dart. I'm not calling him Dr. Dart anymore. Administrator Dart, or Director Dart.
Commandant.
Yes. He said, if it gets bad, I will take your word for it, and you'll get your emergency powers, your mask mandate. Okay.
Right.
And so then when Bynum finally got his ordinance, he said he has to, because he gave his word to Mr. Dart. Right?
Representing Mr. Dart instead of representing the people who elected him.
Now, here's what I want to say to that. There was a great interview I think it was Thursday or Friday. Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy talked to Trump, Rose Garden. And they were talking about Fauci. And, Trump says, listen, Fauci's a really nice guy, easy to work with and everything. I don't have a problem with him as a character, but he's been wrong. And he says, I can't always go with what he says. That's my job. But what's going on here in the Tulsa area, in the city of Tulsa, is we've got somebody who abdicated all the tough decisions to some bureaucrat. It would be like Trump saying, Fauci, you're in charge now. Anything with masks or quarantines or anything, you're God here. That's what's going on.
It would be nice if G.T. Bynum would pretend that he's making his own decision and say, based on the information I got. But no, he simply says, Dr. Dart says we can't. Dr. Dart says we can. We do whatever he says, even though he's unelected. And literally, I had some guy jump me on Twitter about the fact that I was complaining about Dr. Dart. He says, yeah, but it's the party that's in charge that is the one who appointed him. I'm like, it doesn't matter party. You voted for a city guy who is ceding all of the authority to the county. The division of the separation of powers is different than the concentration of powers. And G.T. Bynum is concentrating the powers. He's a tyrant.
Tom, and whoever told you that is ignorant to how our city works. We don't have partisan city government here at all.
Exactly. They were saying, oh, the party. I said, what? The nonpartisan party? That was my response.
Yeah.
Which nonpartisan party is telling Dr. Dart to take over?
Yeah.
These morons run high and low from the public schools.
While you're talking about morons, this is the other part. This is the other part of This is part of the court updates. Friday, very few people talked about it. There was an emergency order by the Supreme Court of the United States. It was brought by a petition of a church in Reno, Nevada. And they were complaining that the state government was not treating all citizens, all classes, all activities, right? They're saying freedom to worship ought to be protected by our Constitution. But the state of Nevada said, if you're a casino, we'll let you open and fully operate as long as you don't have more than 50% of whatever your building occupancy is. But they said to churches, large and small, whatever denomination, doesn't matter if you got a 2,000 seat auditorium. They said churches, 50 people, period. 50 period. That's why I said at the beginning of the show, you might win the lottery and get a ticket to one of the 50 slots to go to church this Sunday in Reno.
This is why GT loves this, is because he's a fascist at heart. And that is private ownership controlled by government. The company is privately owned, but the government is going to come in and say, you know what, we're going to collectively own your means of production by calculating the percentage by which you can operate 50%. It's like, get out of my effing life. The government force through GT-style fascism is absolutely destroying our capitalist society.
And here's my little pushback. And Oldham really works hard on this about, let's be true to the Constitution. There's sometimes the only way you can be true to the Constitution is by political might. And this is one of those situations where we've been sold out by our Supreme Court on a 5-4 decision, emergency order. The majority didn't even write a majority opinion on this. Now, the 4 that voted against the state of Nevada wrote scathing minority opinions on it. But the majority didn't even have the guts to explain their ruling.
Right.
Yeah, so, but this is where, there's the Supreme Court and then there's the Supremer Court, which convenes on Election Day. We the people will be the Supremer Court.
I love how the people go ahead, Oldham.
Well, I was going to say in complete agreement with what you just said, but we also have to, as we the people, we have to remember that the members of the Supreme Court are only there in a time of good behavior. It's a lifetime appointment, but only during a time of good behavior. They obviously are not in good behavior when they're voting for things like this, which is not equal protection, not a complete violation of the First Amendment. And so we have to start considering, what are we going to do to force the ouster of these bad judicial actors? And it's not just at the Supreme Court, it's at the federal and state courts in all levels. What are we going to do to reform our judiciary? Because right now our judiciary is completely lawless.
Yeah.
So anyway, Tom, I'm Sorry to interrupt
No,
you. But I wanted to
that's
get that
good.
in.
That's good stuff, because the reality is people don't realize that if the Supreme Court comes up with an unreasonable decision, that's not the end of the discussion. There's 1,000 people have come to me and said, "Oh, the Supreme Court decided the mask based on Marbury versus Massachusetts," and I'm like, "Well, Marbury versus Massachusetts." Sorry, Jacobson.
Marbury versus Madison.
But the mask thing, they've said Jacobson versus Massachusetts. So
Jacobson
they said
v.
Jacobson.
Massachusetts, correct.
But that's an argument of vaccines, not masks. And so, again,
it's also a bad judgment of a
bad
bad court.
So the point is, the people who love government control are the same people who are arguing against police brutality. They hate government control, but they argue against police brutality. But what they say is
police brutality.
They want to be able to use the force of government to control me to wear a mask, but they hate the force of government to kill George Floyd. Okay, they want to tear down statues in violation of private property and such, but they think that they are promoting freedom by iconoclasm. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No doubt. You know, here's the thing. I was talking recently with a congressman who said, look, if the Democrats sweep these elections, you're going to see a quick move to move the Supreme Court to a membership of from 9 justices up to 15. Because the Constitution does not state a limit on the number of justices.
They've stacked it before. That Abraham Lincoln did the same trick. It's the same thing Abraham Lincoln did.
Yeah, but, you know, so this is the deal here. If you can't remove them from office because you can't get the House of Representatives to impeach them, you can get more justices crowding their space in the Senate. So if you control the Senate but not the House, this is one of the ways you can move.
Yeah, correct.
You know,
well, remember remember that the only way right now to get rid of a justice or a lot of your judges is to impeach them.
Yeah.
We need other things, and that's why I say for state judges, we have to utilize Article 15, Section 2, when they perjure their oath, when they violate people's rights in their courtroom, they need to be brought up on charges so that we can skip the impeachment process. Because, quite frankly, political process is never going to happen.
That's right. There's two things we're missing here, and that is exercising of existing law, enforcing existing law. Just simply exercise the law that's already written, and that'll calculate about 90% of the problem. And otherwise, let's educate the populace. Let's make sure that the constituents who are literally voting know what the hell the Constitution is. And this is where our public schools have totally failed us. 100% totally failed us, is that the students of today have no idea what the Constitution is. They don't know what public and private is. They have no idea what economics is. They don't have a freaking deal what's going on around here, because the public schools have trained them in socialism, but not in individual freedom.
That brings up a teaser for next week. Next week, we're going to be talking a little bit about EPIC and about the state education budget, which is a disaster right now because everybody's moving to EPIC. They are the #1 school district, largest in the state now. I predicted it would happen 3 years from now. It's happened now. The problem is that the big school districts, Oklahoma City and Tulsa, are getting funded for all the students they had 2 years ago. And so now the state doesn't have the money to pay EPIC because they're still giving it to the big failed school districts.
Let's let government do it.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, it's good things, but it's going to be a showdown over our education budget. And I'll have a bigger report for you next week.
Freaking Deborah Gist just came out today. She's like, you know what? Maybe we'll do 100% online. Wow. I just figured that out. I was like, my God, where have you been? 40 years
Yeah.
of begging for more paperback books that you let the students tear up because you can't take care of our resources. You're like, wow, maybe I'll just go totally online. I don't know, Deborah. Let's smoke another one and figure it out.
Yeah.
Let's do a survey. Maybe if we do a survey, the parents will tell us what we should do with their kids, dude. This would be awesome. Deborah Gist.
And that, folks, is Tom's Academy Award moment.
Jesus Christ. Why are we taking a survey when you're hired to know what you're doing, Deborah Gist?
So
God.
you remember about a year ago, the state superintendent decided to fine Epic, $500,000, I think it was?
$500,000. They wouldn't even give them a waiver.
Yeah, because they put on one place of their timesheet something that belonged in another place.
Trying to code properly for the state. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they said, yeah, we understood you made a mistake, but we're still taking your money. Now, guess who's providing free training to all the school districts on how to do online properly? Epic is.
Epic.
Guess what Epic's getting paid for by the state? Nothing. Meanwhile, they're getting fined $500,000.
All of a sudden, the news media is like, Epic is a public school entity. Anyone can. Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
pathetic.
I'm going to be reaching out to the founders of Epic, and we're going to make sure we got our facts on, because we're looking at writing an article. Because it may not be headlines now, but I'm telling you, they're not going to be able to pass a state budget unless they fix this, because what we're doing is paying for ghost students at the big schools for 2 years after they leave.
Right.
And here's Tom.
That's exactly it.
Tom, if 2 years ago you lived in Oklahoma City and last year you moved to Tulsa, went to Tulsa Public Schools, both of those schools got paid for your kids. Okay. And then if this year you switch them all to Epic, guess who gets paid? $9,000 to Tulsa, $9,000 to Oklahoma City, and only $4,500 to Epic, who's actually teaching them.
And I can be 21 years old, not enrolled in anything, and roll through an Oklahoma City public school food site and get fed like a murder hornet. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. It's ridiculous. We're paying people we don't even know who they are. We're feeding people we don't even know who they are, and pretending it's education for the children.
Tom,
Oklahoma City.
Every one of our state legislators, senators, and House of Representatives is responsible for this because they wrote that code.
Right.
They said this is how we're going to do it.
Right.
But we're going to talk about this next week, not this week.
Yeah. The public schools, if we keep talking, it will be next week. The public schools are paid for pieces of paper turned in, not for lunches served. When it comes to the cafeteria, the money is made by pieces of paper turned in, not for lunches served. If we got down to the type of intricacy that the federal government does with private business, they wouldn't let you pretend you were serving lunch by turning in pieces of paper. They say, no, we got to see the lunch is served. Yeah. But the murder hornets that kill people are fed by the Oklahoma City public schools. And that's how it works, kids.
So that's next week.
Next week.
Oh, them touche, man. You got me there.
All week long. Anybody else before we close it out? We did Rick Hubbard. We did all sorts of GT Bynum stuff. We did whatever else we did. Anything else?
And the three big things you need to know.
The three magnitudinal inferences.
You knuckle dragger, you.
Dan Potter, it takes one to know one, you moron. And so the thing is, though, the three
lawless fool. I will just call him the lawless fool.
Dan Potter.
That's what he is. He's just a lawless fool. I'm sorry. I will call him that. Anybody can share that. He'll call me a knuckle dragger. I'll call him a lawless fool, and I'll be able to prove my point. He can't prove it.
He's what?
I haven't dragged my knuckles for at least a month.
To try to give Dan Potter a little of respect. Dana White, what does he call him? He calls him I don't know what he calls him.
I don't know. Anyway, we were trying to get out of here and I interrupted.
I had a line, but I ruined it. Ladies and gentlemen, Tommy McKay right here with 3D Politics every week, 7 p.m. Facebook Live, no matter how we have to connive. I've got David Oldham all the time on constitutionalgrounds.com. David Van, Soonerpolitics.org. One day I'll remember my joke and I'll bring it to you then. Oh, don't forget, we've got Craig Emmel and other mayoral candidates in Tulsa coming up. He has Craig Emmel, Move Tulsa Forward. .com. He is going to be on our show coming up. So we've got mayoral discussions. David Van, David Oldham, thanks again. Once again, Tommy McKay signing off for 3D Politics. Sure wish I would have remembered that.